legislature may authorize the state lottery if the net proceeds of the lottery's revenues are allocated to provide financial assistance to citizens of the state to enable such citizens to attend post-secondary educational schools. And then it lays out how we can have a lottery. So we say lotteries are bad, but if you're doing it for this. So that's our conference meeting today. All our jurors are here. General, are you ready to resume your proof, or do we have any preliminary matters? Any preliminary matters? From the fence?
Your Honor, I did want to ask the court to reconsider the order that you had entered, or your ruling in the Michael McCracken phone call. I don't mean to misrepresent the court's order, but as I recall, the court's order was that in light of the fact that you had been made aware, your first order, you didn't understand that the state had had that call in its possession for over 3 years. That information came to your attention after you had entered the order, so you entered an amended order, at which point you pointed out that the tape recording had been in my possession for about 4 weeks. Actually, it was 3, but we're not really splitting hairs. I think we got it on the 22nd. We started trial on the 20th. Well, we got it on the 2nd. We started trial on the 24th, so it's 3 weeks and a day. But the court said that really there's not, and here I'm paraphrasing, so I might be misrepresenting the court's intention here, but I took it as there's not a whole lot in that tape. There's no smoking gun, as the court referred to it, and therefore, in light of the fact that I'd had it for 4 weeks and there's really no smoking gun in it, the court didn't find that it was prejudicial for us to have to deal with it going forward. And I would just ask, in light of the fact that McCracken doesn't live in Tennessee, he's an out-of-state witness, it would have been very difficult for me in a 3-week period as we're trying to put the final touches on preparing for trial to make contact with him. Mr. McCracken is not somebody who's anxious to be interviewed, so a phone call to him, I did not make a phone call to him, but I'm confident that a phone call to him would have fallen on deaf ears and I would not have been able to make contact with him. And we think the content of that phone call suggests something different than there's no smoking gun. We think it is highly harmful and prejudicial to us, as it provides a motive for the state. And I'm confident that we'll hear about that phone call in closing argument, as it ties up their motive for why this all happened. And so we believe that it is critical. We believe it's highly prejudicial. We believe that having it for, in what's nearly a 4-year period, having been given it for about 3 weeks, to no fault of the state, no fault of either of these prosecutors, but nevertheless, the state was in possession of it, and I think we should have been given, and I think we're prejudiced by the fact that we have to move forward. So I'd ask the court to reconsider.
Thanks, sir. John, anything you want to add?
I would just say that Mr. McCracken had a phone number. They had a phone number. He could have called him. He talked to me. He was not what I would call a happy witness. He was not very cooperative, but he would give a lot of information. He was involved in information. And we have limited this phone call to excerpts. We tried very hard to eliminate anything that would be prejudicial to the guy. And we have agreed not to ask Mr. McCracken to test the call on him for this section 4. So we're not going to go into that. We merely want to have him talk about his knowledge of how he knows Mr. Guy, how long they've known each other, that's his voice on the recognized voice on the call, that is his own voice on the call. So I'll think about it.
Yeah, as I stated in the amended order, I did misunderstand what the state was saying. I thought that it was in law enforcement possession in Baton Rouge until recently. Then I was informed by the state that I misunderstood that, and I appreciate them correcting that misunderstanding. It was in Knox County from very early on, and certainly was subject to discovery. It's not a situation, though, where it's being turned over in trial. I know 3 weeks compared to 4 years is not a significant period of time at all, but there was time to follow up on him. And what I meant by there's no smoking gun, I think Mr. Guy was being careful, very careful about what he was saying to avoid making any type of admission against interest, or certainly no confessions in there. There are certainly statements that could be perceived to be incriminating, so I do think that there's a significant relevance to it. And what I meant by smoking gun is it just didn't go so far as like this is going to completely change the entire theory of the defense or the theory of the state. As I said kind of early on, it's easier for me to make these evidentiary decisions once I know what the defense theory is. And at this point, I'm still traveling under the position that it's an identity issue, that he didn't do these crimes, because the proof that someone did this is overwhelming, and I don't think it's being disputed by the defense. So it really makes issues about whether or not he's the person who did this and what his intention was, if he did it, highly relevant. And so even though it's incriminating, I don't think it's unfairly prejudicial. So I am going to let them play it. If they brought it forward in the middle of the trial, I think that would be a little bit different to me than something that was provided at least 3 weeks before the trial began. And it was a phone call the defendant made to somebody he was in a relationship with. And so I know it's not the defense responsibility to ask their client, who ought did you talk to from the jail, but it was not a surprise to Mr. Guy if it was a surprise to his attorneys. So I'm going to maintain my ruling and allow the state to play the redacted portions. Yes, sir.
Yes, just along that same call, and we would just like to preserve for the record, as you know, we challenged the search of the house in Knoxville and also the arrest of Mr. Guy. We were overruled on both of those. We want to preserve for the record our argument that this call could be or would be fruit of the poisonous tree of both those things. Had Mr. Guy not been arrested on the faulty warrant, he wouldn't have been in jail making the call. They wouldn't have gotten the faulty warrant but for the illegal search of the Knoxville house. So we just want to make sure that when we come back on appeal, if we do, no one will say that we waived the fruit of the poisonous tree argument.
I certainly don't think that you're waiving. I disagree with it, but I think you have done a good job, Mr. Halstead, in preserving the record. I understand the objection.
And I would also say, I don't know if we're going to see the Louisiana officers about the arrest today, but, okay. I just want to make sure that they don't ask whether Mr. Guy was asked to make a statement. He asserted his right to counsel, so I assume we won't be going there in terms of the discussion.
Will there be any comments on his invocation of his rights?
Absolutely. I've tried to admonish every witness repeatedly to avoid any reference to the Baton Rouge search. That's
Or him saying,
yes.
I want to talk to a lawyer.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Preliminary matters from the state.
Your Honor, sir, I have a brief matter. We had Eddie Wassman on yesterday, and we went through his report page by page, and I overlooked admitting the report. I would ask to late file that as the next state's exhibit. I've talked to... It is what he testified to yesterday with the contents of the 2 cell phones and the desktop computer.
Like the Cellbrite report.
That's it, Your Honor, the financial transaction. It's not a Cellbrite report. I think it was a UFED report, but I didn't introduce the actual UFED examination.
Are there any objections to the report?
We do not agree that they can file this now, so we object to the record.
Yeah, I'm going to let you recall him if you want to get that in. I don't want to just add it to his testimony, but I will let you recall him just for the sole purpose of having him say this is my report.
Yes, sir. Thanks, sir.
All right.
Do you want to take up the issues with these Louisiana officers before the jury comes in? Because we're going to go pretty quickly.
This is about the search issues.
No,
and
it's about the videos that we were intending to offer through their testimony.
From Walmart.
I think that we're okay on the Walmart because we have what we believe is a sufficient affidavit. Special Agent, he's retired now, but Special Agent Robert King with the FBI went to that Walmart and collected the video. We have the affidavit from the records custodian, which the court has approved. But he also participated in collecting video from Lowe's and Home Depot. The Lowe's was in Gonzales, Louisiana, and we have an affidavit from a Lowe's representative who is not from Louisiana, but who is a Lowe's records custodian who reviewed the material. But I think we would also need Robert King's testimony to discuss how he went. Now, all of the witnesses know they're not to make reference to anything that came from the Baton Rouge search. We just believe that they can testify that as part of their investigation and assisting Knox County law enforcement, they went to this particular store. We have a similar situation with Louisiana State Police Officer Jerry Coleman, who participated in getting a video from the Dan Boudreaux's Ace Hardware store. As Your Honor knows, we introduced evidence yesterday that a note was found in a suitcase in the guest bedroom of the Guy residence referencing Dan Boudreaux's Ace Hardware and number 2 sewer line cleaner. It's in Napoleonville, Louisiana, which is an outlying area around Baton Rouge. Based upon that, we believe that there would have been, and I think the court has ruled that the video from that would have been inevitably discovered. Mr. Boudreaux is an older man. He sent in an affidavit. The defense objected to the contents of it because some of it was testimonial, because he talked about his conversations with TFO Coleman. They've had some bad weather down there and a lot of problems. So he apparently is sending me. I've been told for the last 2 weeks that they are sending me this new affidavit. As of this morning, I haven't received it, but I do have the old one, and I have Agent Coleman here to talk about, what he did in response to the information that he got from Knox County. He has, of course, been instructed not to make reference to any receipts that were found in the defendant's apartment. So we would like to, I would like to make an offer of proof with respect to these agents, rather than putting them on in front of the jury. That could be prejudicial, look like the defense is trying to keep something from the jury's knowledge. So
Let's go ahead and do your offer of proof before we get started with them.
Okay.
Sir, if you just come around here to the witness stand. You please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give in the case now on trial will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, help you God?
I do.
Please have a seat, sir. Once you're seated, you may remove your mask.
Thank you.
We called you in here before the jury arrives just so we can do an offer of proof. So Attorney Jones is going to ask you a few questions.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning.
Could you state your name for the record, please?
It's Robert King, K-I-N-G.
And Mr. King, can you tell the court where you were employed and what your duties were back in November and December of 2016?
I was a special agent with the FBI, and I was assigned to the New Orleans Division's Baton Rouge resident agency.
Okay. Now, Agent King, you are aware that we are not making reference to anything that was taken from the Baton Rouge search of Joel Guy's apartment?
Yes.
And you've been made aware of that?
Correct.
And also that we're not to make any reference to the fact that Mr. Guy, within his rights, reserved his right not to speak to law enforcement. So
yes, ma'am.
you're aware of that. Okay. So my questions are, once you received information from Knox County Sheriff's Office employees, and I believe you were also working in concert with Scott Henning with the East Baton Rouge Sheriff's Office, is that correct?
Correct. We involved them when we were attempting to locate the subject so we could arrest him. And since it was in their parish, we contacted them and kind of worked jointly.
Did you participate in the defendant's arrest?
Yes.
And on what date did that occur?
I'd have to review the 302.
Does it sound like November the 29th, 2016?
That's roughly correct, yes.
Who was present with you when you arrested him?
We had probably 5 or 6 other agents from the Baton Rouge office and a few people from the East Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff's Office, and there may have been one LSU police officer there.
Okay. Was Lieutenant Henning with you?
I believe so, yes.
And where did this arrest take place?
At the defendant's outside his apartment
So
on the
he was
apartment grounds.
outside?
Yes, he was.
Okay.
He came outside, and once he got to the bottom of the stairs and walking towards his car, we arrested him by his vehicle.
Do you mind speaking into the microphone
I'm
a little
sorry.
bit? I'm kind of hard of hearing, so I just want to make sure that I'm understanding you.
Okay.
So when he was placed under arrest, I take it you had an opportunity to observe his appearance?
Yes.
And had you looked at any photographic evidence of his appearance before making this arrest? I mean, how did you know that it was him?
We had pictures that the sheriff's office here had sent down to us to look at, so we were working off of those. And then when he came out, he looked basically like his pictures, as far as I can remember, that we had.
Okay. How long would you say you had an opportunity to observe his appearance when you arrested him?
It was a good while. After he was arrested, he was placed in one of the vehicles to be transported. So it probably 10 or 15 minutes, because we took care of him, made sure he didn't have any weapons or anything, put him in the car, and kind of formulated a plan moving forward from there. So he was there and then transported off. So long enough to sit there and see.
As part of your what you did with respect to this investigation and assisting officers with the investigation, did you travel to certain store locations in the Baton Rouge area in the days subsequent to Mr. Guy's arrest?
The Baton Rouge and Gonzales area, yes. And Gonzales is just a suburb of Baton Rouge.
Okay. So on November the 30th, 2016, did you go to a Lowe's department store in Gonzales, Louisiana?
Yes.
And did you interview Charles Spears?
Yes.
Records custodian or
He was I can't remember his exact title, but he was their security person in charge of cameras and loss prevention for the store.
And while you were there, did you have an opportunity to review any kind of video with him? Okay. And were you able to identify the defendant as the person you observed on that video?
Right. The video that we identified, we were able to see the defendant on there, and once we did that, we asked for them to make a copy so we could take it and provide it to the investigators, which we did.
Okay. And did this video depict the defendant making a purchase on November the 7th, 2016 at approximately 12:40 p.m.?
Yes.
Okay. And did it also include a video depicting his exit from the store and his vehicle in the parking lot?
I believe so, because we would ask for, once we found the defendant, the video, we would ask for any other videos associated with that. And since they have multiple cameras, we would try to make sure we had him all the way through the parking lot, the vehicle, and out. And I believe that one did have him getting into a vehicle.
Is obtaining store videos an investigative practice that you have done in the past?
Tons of time. I'm a subject matter expert in child abductions, and we travel a lot, and over the career we obtain a lot of video, and there's so many ways to locate and identify specific videos or specific items. It's not that difficult anymore, especially with the systems that all these retailers have, because they track inventory and where it's placed in the stores. With a little legwork, you can get to pretty much whatever you want.
Are you familiar with Lowe's department stores?
Oh, yeah.
Lowe's home goods stores, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay. And you've been to them before. Have you ever obtained video from them before?
I'm sorry, what?
Have you ever obtained video from a Lowe's store in the past?
Yes.
Okay. And have you had an opportunity to review the recording of that transaction on November the 7th, 2016 at 12:40 p.m.? Have you had an opportunity to review that recently?
Yes, I did.
And is it the same video that you saw back on November 30th, 2016?
Yes, ma'am, because what we normally do, I would always do, is once we obtain it from the store, it always plays on their players. I get back to the office, I put it in our machines to make sure it works, because sometimes the proprietary software doesn't necessarily work when you leave the store. Make sure it works on ours, and then I send it off.
Okay. And do you have any experience in tracking products using product codes?
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell the court a little bit about how that works, or how you do that?
Again, I learned that through doing a lot of child abductions. We would find certain items, they would have barcodes of items of interest, and we would start narrowing down, trying to figure out what stores. We'd always start with the big stores and say, hey, is this one of your products? Sometimes their national products are going to be in a lot of stores. Then we would try to refine it based on any other information we had to look. A lot of the stores now, most of them, you can pull up the barcode. They can tell you it's theirs. Then they can pull up and say, well, we sold 6 of those over the last 2 weeks. Then they can go to those videos from there. One instance, we were able to find a trash bag that's made specifically for one store and only sold at one store. It was something we could do. So with a little work, you can pretty much get there. I mean, there's going to be probably 1 in a million you can't, but with a little work, going from store to store, you could get what you want with a barcode.
So a store bag that identifies the name of the store, that would be one tool that would assist you in narrowing your focus. Is that a fair statement?
It would make your job a lot easier, because that would be one of the ones I would start with before we expanded our search.
And in your experience, do certain stores like Home Depot or Lowe's or Walmart have products that are exclusive to that particular store?
Yes, I know Walmart does. I believe Lowe's. I think Walmart, great value, may be one of theirs. It's made for Walmart and Sam's exclusively.
Okay. And in respect to this investigation, I believe that you spoke to a Leanne Hildebrandt in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, who was an asset protection person in a Walmart in Baton Rouge. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that would have been around December the 7th, 2016?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did you use your knowledge of barcodes to help identify a transaction that took place in that Walmart store?
Yes, we did.
Okay. Now, I want to direct your attention to an interview you did on December the 6th, 2016 with Aaron Haskins, who was the multi-store asset protection manager for Home Depot in Baton Rouge. And I want to ask you if you had an opportunity to interview him with respect to your search for any kind of video surveillance evidence connected to Joel Guy.
Yes, I did.
Okay. And did you review video with Aaron Haskins?
With that one, it took him some time to make us a copy. Our office is maybe a quarter mile from there, so when Mr. Haskin called, I went and picked up the video, looked at it there, make sure it was good. He said if we have any problems, let him know. I took it back to the office again, viewed it on our computer, and then forwarded it to the Knox County Sheriff's Office.
But you did view it at the Home Depot store in
Yes.
Baton Rouge. Okay, and then you reviewed it again at your office to make sure that it was operable.
Now,
correct?
mistakes learned from not doing that early in my career, and you send it off, and then you have to go back and do it again, so yes.
And this would have been the Home Depot store number 3070 in Baton Rouge, Louisiana?
Yes.
And the transactions were for November the 18th, 2016 at, there were 2 transactions actually, one at 2:29 p.m. and again at 3:01 p.m. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct.
Okay, and you've had an opportunity recently to review that video again, is that correct?
Yes.
And is it the same video that you saw when you viewed it in your office in Baton Rouge and in the Home Depot store in Baton Rouge back in December of 2016?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Pass the witness.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, sir.
So in terms of getting the videos, You actually had, because of the Louisiana search, you had some receipts, correct?
I'm sorry, of which
In
search?
terms of looking for videos, you had some receipts from the Louisiana apartment search, is that right? Do you recall that?
Your Honor,
Hey, this is the jury out hearing, I'm just trying to
Okay, I just wanted to
establish-
make sure I didn't
Yeah, I'm
overstep.
sorry.
Okay.
You can say anything.
I'm sorry, I
You want to
should have
call
been
us? Let's
clearer.
do this again. Yes, sir, we did.
So some of what you're talking about, the barcode searches, weren't actually done in this case, right?
The
Not
bar-
all of them. The barcode searches.
No, we did barcode searches, but the receipts that we found, there was, of course, item barcodes and stuff. I mean, the receipts had store locations and different things on them, and the items are listed, and then you take that for location, and then you can take other evidence that was obtained at different searches with barcodes, and that helps narrow the search to go, hey, I want to go to Home Depot or Lowe's first, as opposed to every little store in Baton Rouge.
Okay. So let's say that you did not have the receipts. Do you recall looking for the purchases of Sterilite tubs, big blue tubs, that were eventually found having been purchased at a Walmart?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let's say that you look at the barcode for those tubs, and that's all you know. That just tells you it's what? What does that tell you?
It'll tell you, it depends on the system and the barcode, how much information they've entered into all these different databases that are public. But when you go there, it has a SKU on it. It says what the item is, item number. So we take that and we would go to a store and find the asset protection manager and go, we're trying to find out if your store sells this specific item with this barcode. And then they look in the system and they'll say, yes, we have that SKU in our system, barcode SKU. Or no, we don't. If they don't have it, then we go to the next store. If they do, then that's when we take the next step to say, does your system allow to show when that was sold or where it is in the store? And then we start working from there.
Okay. So let's say that you have these tubs, you have the barcode. So do you have to search every store in Louisiana? Is that what you're saying?
If we didn't find the store, and to be thorough, you would have to keep going and going until you found one. Based on all my experience, like I said, I've done this, look for evidence a lot. Yeah, we always start with the big brand stores, the Walmarts, the Lowe's, and then we would work our way down maybe to the Dollar Generals and that type stuff, depending on the areas.
Okay. And then, so when you find that it was a Walmart store, then you have to check every Walmart store until you find that particular purchase?
Right, if you don't have the receipt with the specific one, for example, if we wanted to say, I'm trying the Walmart, if I went to one, he might say, this is our item, check his system and go, we didn't sell any of those over the last week, 2 weeks, whatever the time frame we were looking at. Then I would go to the next one. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 Walmarts in the geographic area of Baton Rouge. So we would have gone to those, especially knowing that the subject was already at Lowe's, so we knew that would be one. The Walmart's maybe a quarter mile from the Lowe's in Gonzales, so that would have been one logically would have checked also. The one by Burbank, I believe, is the closest one to his apartment in Louisiana. So you take all the information, the whole picture of the case, and you start there is where your search starts.
So let's say we go to a Walmart and they say we sold 6 of these in the last 30 days. But that doesn't tell you, their system doesn't tell you when they sold it?
Yes, sir. They can pull up a lot of times, and they can pull up and say, okay, we sold these, six of them in 30 days. Then everything's so electronic now with the scanners and all, they can say, okay, those items were sold on aisle 4, 5, and 6, and here's the date and the time that those were sold.
Well, but in your experience, not all stores have that capability, is that right?
Yeah, and some of the mom and pop stores, the smaller stores, but the big chain stores, the bigger ones, usually have that capability so they can tell you what aisle the product's on and everything else.
So then you would have to search, or you would have to then look through all of those videos for, so they say we can tell it was sold in aisle 3, 4, or 5. Did you say they can tell you a time frame or just that it was sold there?
They would say it's several things. They could tell you sometimes what aisle it's actually on, and then they can go in their system and say we sold it arbitrary date, January 1, 2020, it was sold, and it went through Register 5 at 4:19 p.m. Then he would turn around and go to his surveillance system, rewind the cameras to that specific date, and you start watching, and then you could see whoever came through on January 1 at that time with that item.
Now, you mentioned the number of stores within the geographic area. Does that include like the Gonzalez store
Yes, sir.
as being the Baton Rouge geographic area?
It's probably 8 or 9 miles from one to the other.
Okay. And do you know how many Lowe's there are in that area?
I know there's one Lowe's, either 2 to 3 Lowe's, and I think 2 Home Depots. And then you can start getting into Denham Springs, and then there's another one once you get a little further out.
One moment, Your Honor. Now, at least there was a time when video wasn't retained very long, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Are you aware of how long the stores such as Walmart retains video?
I can't recall. They all vary. Some of the larger ones actually keep it for years, some 30 days, and they loop over some 24 hours, and it, rewrites itself. So it's really store specific or company specific.
So you don't know what the policy is for Walmart?
No, sir.
And you don't know what the policy is for Home Depot?
No, sir. I just know, based on some experience, it's not a 30-day rewrite. They have a little bit longer period of time to hold those videos than the smaller places.
And you don't know what the policy is for Lowe's?
No, sir.
Yes, I forgot to ask him. You also went to Academy Sports on November the 30th. Is that correct?
That's correct.
2016.
Yes.
And you recovered video from that store as well.
Yes.
Is that correct? And that depicted transactions from November the 18th, 2016, and November the 19th, 2016.
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
And you had an opportunity to review those again? Those
Yes.
transactions?
Yes.
Are they the same as what you observed when you?
Yes,
recovered
ma'am.
on
Yes.
November the 30th?
And we follow the same process. We pick it up, we check it at the office before we turn it over to the sheriff's office to make sure it works.
So if the date of the offense in question in this trial is November the 26th, 2016, all of the videos that you saw were generated within 30 days of the date of the offense. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor, just briefly. But you did not go November 26th to Academy Sports? Or, right. But she said within a week of, or within 30 days of November 26th.
I'd have to look at the whatever reports, but we went, it was pretty quick once we got the call from Knox County saying, this is going on, can you help us? It was very quick after that date.
Do you know their policy for how long they keep tapes?
No, sir, I believe it's like Lowe's and Home Depot. They keep theirs a little longer because we have been to their stores before looking for stuff and thinking that they weren't going to have it, and we were shocked that they kept it, but I can't give you exact time frame.
Do you know how specific their system is if you came and said someone purchased, or we're trying to see if someone purchased a knife here? Do you know how specific their system is about particular purchases?
Theirs was pretty good, I recall, because we were able to find a suspect in stores on certain aisles and everything. So theirs is very complex as well as Walmart's.
Well, but again, did you have a receipt when you were doing that from the apartment?
I can't remember if we had the receipt, but even if you didn't, if you get there through a barcode and looking and have an item number and description, you'll be able to find what you need.
Okay.
Granted, if it's within the time you asked for.
Okay. But you don't know if their system is such that they could tell you what day it was purchased on or what days purchases of those knives were made?
We were able to find all that when they were looking through their system, yes, sir. But I'm not sure exactly which one we used because I don't want to discuss the evidence that was taken, but we would have gotten there the same way as we'd have looked for it. They would have said this was sold on this date and at this time. Their system's the same as Walmart, is what you're getting at. Yes, sir.
Thank you, that's all.
I would just add for the record, Your Honor, please, that we do have an affidavit from the Academy Sports Loss Prevention, Director of Loss Prevention and Custodian of Records. So the only store we do not have an affidavit for is the Home Depot in Baton Rouge. And then the affidavit that I have in my possession right now would need to be redacted from Dan Boudreaux. So, and I have another officer to offer proof with respect to that issue.
All right, thanks, sir. You may step down. You can just remain in the hallway. We'll call you in here when the jury gets in just a little bit later. Okay?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Other witnesses on offer of proof?
Coleman. And I would also remind the court that Investigator or Detective McCord received a phone call on the 29th of November from Academy of Sports. We had that testimony yesterday regarding the defendant's attempt to purchase a firearm on that date. So he was alerted to that.
Academy Sports store that the earlier purchases were made in. Thank you, sir. We're getting a chair cleaned off for you right now. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give in the case now on trial will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, help you God?
I do.
Please have a seat, sir. Once you're seated, you may remove your mask.
Could you state your name for the record, please?
Gary Coleman.
And Mr. Coleman, where were you employed back in November and December of 2016?
FBI Violent Crimes Task Force, New Orleans, Louisiana.
Okay. And did you work in cooperation with the Knox County Sheriff's Office and the East Baton Rouge Sheriff's Office with respect to the arrest of Joel Guy, the defendant in this case?
Yes.
Can you tell the judge what your role in that was?
My role was to go to a hardware store in Napoleonville, Louisiana, and to obtain any type of documents or video regarding transactions that may have occurred at that particular hardware store relative to the defendant.
And did you travel to that store in Napoleonville on December the 1st, 2016?
Yes.
And did you speak to Dan Boudreaux, who is the owner of this Ace Hardware store?
Yes.
Did Mr. Boudreaux provide video surveillance for you?
Yes.
And was that surveillance, did it depict the defendant on November the 7th, or did it depict a person making a purchase on November the 7th, 2016?
It was a purchase. I don't remember the exact date, but he did show us a video of the defendant.
And had you ever seen Joel Guy before? Were you able to identify him from the video? Did you participate in his arrest?
I didn't participate in his arrest, but I think I may have saw some photographs of him, perhaps. But I was able to recognize who he was.
You did recognize him?
Yes.
Okay. And have you had an opportunity to review that video again?
Yes.
And is it the same as it was when you looked at it on December the 1st, 2016?
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell the court how close Napoleonville is to Baton Rouge?
Maybe 30 miles, maybe 25 miles. I'm not certain. I'm based out of New Orleans, but it's relatively close. It's a maybe 25, 30-minute drive.
All right. And did you also, at the very same time, on the same date, receive, were you working with another agent?
Yes, I was working with a task force officer by the name of Michael Tucker.
Michael Tucker, okay. And did you go to Assumption Pharmacy, or was that Mr. Tucker, Agent Tucker?
I went together with Mr. Tucker to the pharmacy.
Okay. And did they provide you with video surveillance footage of depicting a person leaving the parking lot?
Yes.
And was that also on November the 7th, was that dated on November 7th, 2016, when the person was leaving the parking lot?
Yes, that sounds right.
Okay. And did you review that video?
Yes,
And did you review it at the time that you
Yes.
talked to the person at Assumption Pharmacy?
yes,
And did you review that again recently?
yes,
Does it appear to be the same video?
yes.
And was that video turned over to Knox County Sheriff's Office in December of 2016?
Yes, it was turned over. I don't remember the exact date, but
Okay.
we turned it over.
All right. Thank you very much. I'll pass the witness.
When you went to the Academy Sport, to the Ace Hardware, when you went there, what information did you have that you were working off of?
We had information that we received from a supervisor tasking us with going to that particular store to obtain whatever evidence or video regarding what occurred at that particular store in terms of what was purchased and video of who purchased it.
Were you told the date and time that the item was purchased?
I can't recall whether we were told date and times, but I think we were told, I think with given the category of chemicals or something perhaps.
So when you get to the store and you say a chemical purchase, obviously I guess you knew the types of chemicals. What did they have to do to find those items?
One of the individuals who worked at the store went to some system where they catalog purchases or dates or times or by item. They did some type of hand computer research or something, but they eventually were able to cross-reference and come up with a date and a time.
How many videos did you have to watch? Was it just one, or did they show you several to try and identify?
Well, I only saw the one that they found, but they did some preliminary work prior to them actually pulling up the video. So I kind of meandered around the store, just looking around while they did what they needed to do to get what we needed.
How long were you there? Do you remember?
35 to 40 minutes, perhaps.
Now, did you have a photo of or anything else of the suspect?
I think we may have had a photo, but I don't recall sharing that or giving that to anyone at the store. But I think we did have a photo.
Now, do you remember what day you went there? You may have testified. I may have missed it. Do you remember what day you went there?
I think it was in December, maybe December the 1st, perhaps, of 16.
One moment, please. So, do you recall where you're kind of vague on the photo. Do you recall where it came from, or?
I don't remember, sir. I was in a support role on that particular case. We were violent crimes task force. We respond to bank robberies, cruise ship. We do a lot of vesting up in and out of vehicles, and I wasn't the primary lead on that case, so I just don't recall.
Thank you, that's all.
Anything else, Joe? Thanks, sir. You may go back to the hallway. We'll call you in just a few minutes. Further proof? Okay.
to identify what's in dispute. In my mind, the videos that are in dispute are the Dan Boudreaux and the Lowe's and Home Depot, because we have the records custodians affidavits, well, not the Lowe's, but now, because I do have an affidavit now, but the Home Depot and the Dan Boudreaux store. With respect to Academy Sports, we have a valid 902 affidavit. We have one for the Walmart in Baton Rouge, and we have one for Lowe's. And I also have the officers present who actually went and looked at the video there and reviewed it again, and we'll say that it's the same. I believe that TFO Coleman's testimony, along with perhaps a redacted version of Dan Boudreaux's affidavit, the state could take out the testimonial language in it. I think that's sufficient. I don't know if before we get to that point his other affidavit will come in. I don't, been waiting on it, Judge, for weeks. So
There's two issues.
and then the Academy Sports, obviously we have the records custodian's affidavit for that.
So there's two issues, and the offer of proof primarily is going to the issue of whether or not these videos are fruit of the poisonous tree from the search of the defendant's apartment, which I have ruled was unconstitutional. And so I don't think there's any question his apartment were used to hone in on these videos. But as I said in my written ruling, and I think that the offer of proof supports that finding, is that I do believe that these videos are not subject to suppression due to inevitable discovery. You have to remember that we have more than receipts here. If we were talking about items that were found in the defendant's apartment and the receipt was in the apartment, I would say, yes, you can't go back and get a video for that. But what we're talking about, I believe, my understanding, are items that were found in the Golden View home. And when the police, we've already seen over the last 2 days, the massive amount of care and collection or time that they took in collecting everything they possibly could find there. And there were items that were clearly connected to these homicides. And you don't normally have 3 jugs of bleach and large industrial size bottles of drain cleaner. And when you combine that with what they found in the home, these are obviously instruments being used in the homicides and alleged abuse of corpse. And so I think that we heard the testimony from the officers that they would have used these product codes to find out where these items are sold. They would start with the large stores, which is where most of these products are purchased, other than the Dan Boudreaux. And then we had the Post-it note from the suitcase in the Golden View home that specifically listed the name and address of that hardware store. And a product. I don't know if it's the same one that was actually purchased there, but a similar product. And so even though I believe that the search of the apartment was unconstitutional, I don't think that the videos that were subsequently discovered for products that weren't found in the apartment are still admissible, because they were going to find these anyway. Now, I certainly think the receipts saved them a lot of time and helped them find them quicker. Academy Sports, they knew about that particular store because of the attempted gun purchase as well, too. So I don't think that it is fruit of the poisonous tree, and I'm just going to affirm my prior ruling on that.
I would add for the record, too, that Detective McCord acted immediately on the Walmart receipts. So, there was urgency to try to identify a suspect, and so he went the very same day that the bodies were found to the Walmart here locally.
I think it's key that the Baton Rouge stores weren't searched until after they had developed Mr. Guy as a suspect and knew where he lived. And so the places they looked, I think we heard testimony from one of the agents that it was the Walmart closest to his home, I believe is what he said. In any event, right or wrong, that's going to be my ruling. I'm going to let the videos come in. Now, the 902 issue, the affidavits, I think we've addressed most of those, and I do think that one is problematic. Perhaps we can redact it. I need to go back and read it again. I was expecting another one, so I didn't. Yeah. All right. Any other preliminary matters, Mr. Halstead?
Well, I think they're telling us that they don't have the affidavits for Home Depot in Louisiana. So do we agree that those will not be admitted into evidence?
The videos, you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how else you're going to enter it if you don't have a witness or you don't have a proper authentication.
I do have a witness for the Home Depot. I have Agent King, and I do have a witness for Dan Boudreaux, Agent Coleman. So,
You have the affidavit on it.
and I have an affidavit that I need to just redact the
Extra language.
extra language, which basically just says I met with these agents.
Yeah. So King, you're saying, can bring in the video because he was there and got it from the store?
Yes.
What do you say to that, Mr. Halstead?
So this is the Ace Hardware one.
I believe.
This is for Lowe's and Home Depot, and essentially, can I just read this?
Yeah.
I thought you had a 902 for Lowe's.
I did, but when we prepared this memo with the assistance of Bill Bright, well, not with the assistance, with Bill Bright doing the memo for me, I didn't have it. But essentially, what we would say, Your Honor, please, is that we should be permitted to introduce this evidence from the Lowe's purchase on November 7th, 2016 at 12:40, and because for the reasons that we have stated through the testimony of Agent King, and also with respect to the purchases on November the 18th, 2016, made at the Home Depot store in Baton Rouge, relying upon Agent King's testimony. Our argument would be that in Tennessee, a trial court must require a party to authenticate or identify any evidence prior to its admission at trial, citing Tennessee Rule of Evidence 901A. In order to authenticate a piece of evidence, a witness only has to testify that the matter is what it is claimed to be, citing Tennessee Rule of Evidence 9B1. In order to authenticate tangible evidence, a witness must be able to identify the evidence or establish an unbroken chain of custody. And we are citing State versus Kilpatrick, 52 Southwest 3rd, 81, a Tennessee Court of Criminal Appeals case from 2000. Authentication of tangible evidence serves to demonstrate that there has been no tampering, loss, substitution, or mistake with respect to the evidence. Quoting State versus Braden, 867 Southwest 2nd, 750, Tennessee Court of Criminal Appeals at 1993, and also State versus Irvin, which is a Westlaw case decided on February the 12th, 2020. Rule 901 does not require absolute certainty of identification. Rather, the circumstances established must reasonably assure the identity of the evidence and its integrity. Citing State versus Ferguson, 741 Southwest 2nd, 125, the Tennessee Criminal Court of Appeals case from 1987, and Ritter versus State, 462 Southwest 2nd, 247, Tennessee Court of Criminal Appeals, 1970. In those cases, the court noted in Ferguson, if the tangible evidence is unique, readily identifiable, and relatively resistant to change, the required testimony need only to confirm the evidence's relevance. State versus Cannon, 254 Southwest 3rd, 287. That's a Tennessee Supreme Court case from 2008. In Irvin, the defendant contended that since the detective who introduced the video did not physically see the defendant on the night of a burglary, he couldn't provide a sufficient authentication for the video at trial and its date and timestamp. But he offered testimony that the court found persuasive to show his training, training that he had regarding identifying a date and time stamp from video, and his training in obtaining surveillance video in the case at hand. So essentially the court was saying that in that case that the defendant's training and experience was sufficient to support introduction of the evidence. In our case, Agent King went to these stores. With respect to the Lowe's, he talked to Charlie Spears on November the 30th of 2016. He requested to review evidence, or he requested the video. He reviewed it. It showed a timestamp, a date and timestamp of November 7th, 2016 at 12:40. He viewed it. I think he testified that he went back and viewed it again, then at his office to make sure that it was operating properly, and then of course he viewed it recently in anticipation of testimony at trial. He recognized the defendant as being the person who was making the purchase because he had participated in his arrest. He's testified that the Lowe's was in Gonzales, Louisiana, which is a bedroom community of Baton Rouge, and close in time. So with respect to the Home Depot, Agent King has testified about his contact with the records custodian or security manager at Home Depot in Baton Rouge. He's offered testimony about the limited, I think he said there were 4 Home Depots in the Baton Rouge area. He went to the one that's closest to the defendant's apartment. It's located on a street called Burbank. And he actually spoke to the asset protection manager on December the 6th of 2016. He went there, viewed the video, looked at it, saw a transaction that occurred on November the 18th, 2016 at two transactions, one at 2:29 p.m. and then again at 3:01 p.m. He reviewed it, recognized the defendant. He reviewed it again. He says it's the same in the same format, same form, and we believe that pursuant to these cases that you should be able to, we should be able to include Lowe's and the Home Depot. So, and I would suggest the same analogy applies to the Dan Boudreaux store. And we obviously had immediate information that this was going to be a location, and so I guess that's a different issue. But certainly that did not come from the Baton Rouge apartment. Only we knew about that before we even had an arrest warrant for the defendant, that was a relevant piece of evidence. So we knew about that on November the 28th, the day the bodies were discovered.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Harwell?
Good morning, Your Honor. As I understand it, the issue we're dealing with is an authentication problem. And the one thing that I see it different in a number of ways from the state, but we're not talking about tangible evidence. We're not talking about a physical item that all of the cases the state was citing seem to be referring to. We're talking about documentary evidence saved in an electronic format. So as I see it, there's two ways to authenticate a surveillance or security video of the kind we're dealing with. One is if you have someone who can watch the video who also was a recipient witness, who can say, yes, that video is a fair and accurate representation of what happened. And I don't think there's been any assertion that anyone has the knowledge necessary to do that, to watch the video and say, yes, I saw Mr. Guy purchase that item, and that video depicts him purchasing that item. The other way you can do it is through the business records of the company. That cases do establish that security video can be considered as a business record if it's kept in the ordinary course of business and saved by the company for business purposes, and we have some affidavits that do that. What we seem to be dealing with here is a situation where we don't have the affidavit, and the state is intending to use a non-company witness to basically provide the information that should have been in the affidavit. To have an agent testify that this video was kept by the company, that it's made by somebody with personal knowledge, that it's done for company purposes. And those things may in fact be true, but the agent's not the right witness to offer that. To the extent he knows any of those things, it's not because he works for the company. He doesn't work for the company. He only knows those things because maybe someone has told him. And so the state's theory is basically we can just cut out the business records part of the authentication, and I don't think that's a correct analysis. I think if they have a proper custodian to testify in person or a properly executed affidavit from a custodian, that could authenticate these security videos. But some agent who went to the business and had a conversation with someone who worked at the business is not sufficient.
And just to clarify, at this point, you do have an affidavit from Lowe's, but you don't from Home Depot.
And I've got the affidavit from Dan Boudreau. And it reads, I, Daniel G. Boudreau, am the duly authorized custodian of records for Dan Boudreau's Ace Hardware and have the authority to certify said records. It's his store. He's Dan Boudreau's Ace Hardware is the name of the store. On December 1st, 2016, TFOs Michael Tucker and Jerry Coleman traveled to Napoleonville, Louisiana, and interviewed me, the owner of Dan Boudreau's Ace Hardware store located at 4767 Louisiana 1, Napoleonville, Louisiana. The investigators advised me of the nature of their investigation and requested to review surveillance footage from November 7th, 2016. There was a receipt, Judge. I mean, there's no question that receipts did help narrow down a time frame. I copied the footage to a thumb drive provided by TFO Tucker. TFO Tucker also obtained a photocopy of the receipt containing items purchased by the suspect. The surveillance footage saved to the thumb drive and photocopies of the receipts attached are true and correct copies of records, and these records were made on or about November 7th, 2016, and were kept in the regular course of business. Signed Daniel Boudreau, and it was notarized. So I want to submit this.
Yeah, I'll take a look at that. That's not your original, is it? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think we need to make a copy of this and strike out the surplusage, so it just conforms with 902. And it's 10 o'clock. Let's take a short recess. I'll come back and tell you what I'm going to decide on the Home Depot video. But if you can go ahead and get rid of that surplusage in there and just leave it with the proper business. All right, let's take a 10-minute recess, folks. We'll come back and begin our testimony.